What's up, guys? It's John Nelson, and you're listening to the Starting Block Podcast. Guys, this is the show for complete athletic development. The objective, the mission is to give you the tools to win, whether you're the athlete, the parent, or the coach. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Chris Scarborough. What's up, man?
How are you? Good afternoon, guys. Good to be here.
We are reporting from the snowy South right now.
Right, exactly.
Snowy South, man. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm in my office. I'm not in my gym office, so I apologize if the audio is a little off. I don't have my big mic with me, but we're gonna try to make it work. But yeah, we're up to about 10.5 inches of snow here in Memphis, which for us is absurd. What's it like down there in Birmingham?
We have about 1.5 inches of snow here, and that is also absurd.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking off air here, and it's like the city's probably gonna be shut down for at least a week because I think it's supposed to stay really cold. I mean, for those that don't understand the South, like, okay, we're in the bottom west corner of Tennessee, and Shelby County is the county Memphis is in, and Shelby County has one snowplow from the last I was told, one for an entire county.
Well, if it makes you feel better,
we live outside that county, and we have none.
Well, John, if it makes you feel better, I was your age before I ever even saw a snowplow, so that gives you some idea.
Oh man, dude, you're old.
Yeah.
You're old.
No, I'm old, and I've never lived anywhere with snow.
Yeah.
So
both.
Yeah,
so a lot of snow today. But anyways, guys, that aside, let's go through everything real quick, and then we'll get started here. But if you're new to the show, welcome. I appreciate you joining us. We are unique. We're a little different than your standard podcast. You're actually going to get multiple shows within the show. So you'll get a Q&A. That's where Chris and I will take the questions you guys submit to us, and we'll tackle them. Those questions could be anything related to performance, the nutrition, the rehab, the neuro voodoo stuff we do, any of the guests that we have on. If you have questions about that, I'll be happy to try to tackle those with Chris. We'll go from there. You can reach me at FarmerJohn_ELP and Instagram. That's my main platform. And Chris, where can they get you, man?
Fast and Agile 49.
Yeah, and we're going to try to do a little better in 2025 with getting those Q&As out. I'll admit we were a little rough in 2024, just kind of an odd year, but we'll get them out. We'll get back on track. Appreciate all the questions. You guys are really hitting us up quite a bit, so thank you. Keep them coming. The next episode you'll get from us is a guest interview. That's what we got today. We'll bring our guest on in just a second. But the guest interviews, like every other podcast on the planet, that's where we bring in our friends, colleagues, people that share the same core value mission that we do. We just talk shop, man. It's also somebody that you can network with, right? Like I said, sharing same core values and missions that we do is really important. And so we've got a really good guest on. Looking forward to talking to him here. And then the final episode you'll get from us is going to be an athlete spotlight. So we just started that last year. We had a couple athletes come on. These are athletes that Chris and I have worked with that have been through our system. Mostly collegiate professional athletes, maybe some high schools athletes, but just kind of cool to hear athletes that have really been through our systems and seeing how they've kind of changed their perception of athletic development, what it's done for them, and how it's helped them in their career. Lastly, we don't run ads on the show, so if you would just do us a solid and share the show, bring us a friend, maybe subscribe. That helps us out a little bit as well. Leave us a rating. Just help us out, man. We do this out of our own time and pocket, so just help us out a little bit. But yeah, with all that being said, I think that's all the housekeeping. So without further ado, we're pleased to welcome Mr. Tyson Gunter to the show. What's up, bro? How are you today?
Welcome, Tyson.
So I'm kind of mad at you because I live in southeast Idaho where we love the snow. And this year we have about, at my house, where at this time of year I usually have 1.5 to 2 feet of snow. You know, there's a little crust out there. So you're getting it all. So I'm a little bit upset about that, but I guess we'll move forward.
Yeah, this is new for us. We usually down here get 1 to 2 decent snows a year. I think last year we had one but the temperature dropped, so it was like -15 here for something. What was this, like 4 days or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
If you got it. I know we did.
It was really
the
cold.
It's ever been here.
Yeah, it was really cold for a while, but then but any ice that we had was very short-lived here.
Yeah. So we get a lot of ice down here as well, but we don't get enough snow to do like snowboard or ski or anything. But I assume you get to do that type of stuff out there, do you, Tyson?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite winter activities in general. I love snowmobiling. That's probably my favorite one. But skiing is a lot of fun, and but this year's been a little bit different than normal. But
Snowmobiling is awesome, man.
as I'm
Yeah,
getting a
that's fun.
little more into having little kids, we don't get out as much as we'd like, my wife and I, but still have a great time when we can.
Yeah. All right, man. So you've got a pretty interesting story. You actually reached out to us and be like, "Hey, I'd love to come on the show and share my story," and that's awesome. I appreciate it. And guys, if you're listening, if you've got a story to share, hit us up. We'd love to chat with you and help share your story as well. But let's just kind of start from, I guess, just your resume, and then kind of go back into the beginning. Like, how did all this begin, man?
Yeah, it's I got a lot of different stories, but but I appreciate you guys. I'm a Paralympian in track and field, long jumper and sprinter, or jumper and sprinter, I guess, all the jumps. Um, for those that don't know, the Paralympics or Parathletics is elite performance. It's a professional, I guess, league, for lack of a better term, for those with physical disabilities. Most people are familiar with the wheelchair racers or the amputees, which I was too back in high school and all that. But I didn't realize I have a vision disability. I have low vision. Technically, I'm legally blind, but I still have vision to be able to function to some degree. And I didn't realize that that was an option. So I grew up playing sports in rural Idaho. Um, After a couple of years off for a church mission, I came back and did track and field at Idaho State University. Go Bengals! And it wasn't until after that that I found out that there was an option for me with low vision to compete at the world level in the Paralympic Games, but also the Para Athletic World Championships and everything that comes along with that each season. So that was a blast for me. And it's been a blast for me over the last, shoot, how long has it been? I don't know, 12, 13 years. I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've made 8 international teams. So I've been able to travel, throughout the world a little bit and having a really good time competing. And I also coach high school track um, with my wife. My wife was a heptathlete at Idaho State, and she's continued to love track and support me in my travels. And then coaching, that's kind of how, in a long, keep it short, but how I ran into you guys in your podcast was I was looking at options for coaching my high school athletes and just seeing what the new things were a couple of years ago. And over the last couple of years, I ran across Tony Holler and Feed the Cats, really loved it, and saw you guys interviewed him several times, I think. And really
Well,
like some of the other stuff.
I'm going to interrupt you there.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
We interviewed him several times, but only one of them actually made it out.
Right.
okay, because I know one of them you talked about being part 6 or 5 or whatever, but
Yeah.
I was trying to find the other ones and didn't find them, so that makes sense.
Nor will you ever, right? Yeah, you won't.
Yeah. Regular listeners of our show are well aware of our audio issues that we have had over the years, so yeah, it's no surprise for us. But yeah, Tony Holler, he's the man.
Yeah, so that's where, I don't want to talk too long about myself, but that's kind of how it all came about.
That's why you're here, man.
Yeah.
You're here to talk about yourself. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Let's start. Like, I want to real quick. Like, so you're a Paralympic athlete. I've in my notes, and correct me if I'm wrong. I got 2 World Championship silver medals.
Yeah.
You also competed in Rio in 2016 as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. What events did you do? It was long jump, right? Is that right?
It's the para athletics is pretty unique where there's a lot of there's several different disability classes within one track meet, right? So there's only so many events and so many things that they can fit, whether it's a TV schedule or the time frame they have to work with. So it's not like traditional track and field where there's all 17 events for men and 17 events for women, and you go for it, right? So within the vision category that I'm in, that I compete in, there's just a few events. I'm in college. I was best at high jump, long jump. And then because my coach made us all run the 4x4, I decided this race sucks. If I'm going to run it, I might as well be on the A team, So I worked hard and got the 4th spot on the A team when some other guys left. I wouldn't call myself super fast, but had an opportunity and was able to take advantage of that. So long story short, I got in the Paralympics, found out about it after college, jumped in the 2013 World Championships, after 2 months of training, I'd graduated college the year before, was just living the married life, getting fat and happy. And then they're like, hey, in 2 months they have the worlds if you can get ready for it. And I was like, crap, I don't think I can, but I'll try. And then I did and had some success, got a silver medal there in the high jump. And then found out that going into 2016, for whatever reason, possibly time or whatever, they took out all the jumps, and it was just I had the opportunity to run the 400. And I was like, gosh, dang it, this either I choose to quit right after I find out about this awesome sport that I want to continue to do, or I change my mindset and I just go and grind out some 400 training for the next couple of years. And so I ended up making, I went from potentially being the Olympic champ or Paralympic champion in an event to barely making the team, but I did make the team and had a great experience going into Rio. And from there, they brought back some of the jumps. So I was able to go and jump again. And now that's where I'm at.
Very good.
That's pretty cool. I want to go back to kind of the beginning of your story, though, if you don't mind sharing and talking on that a little bit. You know, when was the disability diagnosed, and how did that impact you in middle school to high school sports? Like, did you have resources that you were able to, to go utilize and organizations you could compete with? I'm genuinely curious. Like, how did that work for you in high school, middle school?
I was born with ocular albinism, so that's for those listening, you won't see, but I don't have pigment, so my hair is white. Some people are familiar with albinism, but what comes with that is usually some kind of eye disability. It varies depend on person to person. So I have legal blindness, so that's a technical term. I still have some vision. It's like grabbing some binoculars and flipping them around and looking through them. So everything's just kind of far away and flat. And I've been like that my whole life, so I've been able to adapt pretty well in most situations. But in sports, I'm the youngest of seven, grew up on a dairy farm. So we have, like, all my siblings did sports. I had, some genetic talent in our family. Four of my five brothers played college sports, and my one brother could have, but he chose not to. Um, and so I had a lot of support as far as not only athleticism, but understanding of sports. And, you're either farming or playing sports. So that's kind of what we did. Uh,
Hmm.
but it was hard. I loved baseball. I loved watching the Atlanta Braves back in the 90s. And so I thought that was my sport. And then pretty early on, I found out because of my vision that was not going to be my sport, and just kind of rotated around until I found track and field and found that it had the least impact on my ability to perform at a higher level. And my sophomore year in high school, I played basketball and just realized, like, I loved it. And I think with my size at 6'5" or whatever, I could have been really good at it, but it didn't fit my abilities. So track and field became that thing for me. And I had a lot of support from my siblings who were willing to share their, what they had learned in their experience in high school and college, and then just moved from there. Tried to be as independent as I could, and a little bit stubborn helped, not accepting that I had some challenges to overcome, and just kept fighting through it.
I got a question on your particular event, and let's use long jump. I know you said there were other events, but how much would you say that compared to, say, other competitors, other long jumpers with normal vision? I know it's kind of difficult for you to know the answer, but what would be your best guess to the question? How much do you think vision limitations impacted your performance compared to normal? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think it's
Um,
a great question. Did you have a follow-up question to that?
oh no, well, I mean, the only thing that the first thing that comes to mind, like long jump, is you have to be able to hit that board.
Yeah,
You got a very precise. If you undershoot it, you could leave a lot of distance on the table. If you overshoot it, you're or that jump is disqualified.
yeah.
So I mean, yeah, kind of that's. So I'm kind of curious, how that might have impacted you compared to, say, a normal vision.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I felt like, you know, again, because I'm stubborn and because I don't think I try not to use anything that disadvantage I may have against that. And genuinely, I've never felt that I had a huge disadvantage, but I know there is one, right? Because of the, there's what they call a steering component for like an elite jumper. They'll get in there and they'll kind of have a judgment. They've jumped so many times, they kind of know like, all right, if I'm at this point, just by body awareness, I need to slow down or make my steps choppier or whatever. I don't
Right.
have that. So for me, it's just repetition. And thankfully in the long jump, you get more than one chance. So it's like I just do a lot of repetitions and it's like fly down there and do it. But this is interesting. You guys may know more about this than I do. I just learned this that listening to a podcast related to with Coach Holler, actually, he was talking to like a mental specialist, and he said that when they're talking about speed development, that people with vision disabilities generally have an issue with speed development. Now, I don't know if I would be faster or more explosive or whatever without it, because I've never been in that situation. But I think there is some things that are just we're not able to quantify. But with the high jump, for sure, like high jump was probably, I mean, I don't know, but I think I could have been, 7'4", 7'6" high jumper. I think. I got 6'9", close to 7 feet a few times,
Mhm.
but it was so hard for me to hit the steps and hit the takeoff at the time I needed to, and then also to shut my mind off, because there's some fear component when you're coming into the high jump of how you're going to end up if you land in the wrong spot or not.
Right. Right. You definitely want to land on the pad.
Yeah,
And number one, you don't want to run into the standard.
right.
So yeah, I could see where the issues could come up there. But yeah, my initial thought, like on long jump, was that if anybody's ever seen long jump, the board that you have is quite narrow. So did
Yeah.
they make in say the Paralympics? Do you have any or the was there any kind of a did they widen the board, like the takeoff board? Did they give you any more room to make that jump, or is there how are the rules different? I guess is the best
So
way to ask that question.
there's 3 different vision classifications. So mine is
Mm-hmm.
I guess what you would call most able, and we just have everything is as it was in college or Olympic track. There's no differences with the totally blind. And if you haven't seen a totally blind long jump competition, it's amazing. And then the class just above it, which is T12, they do have what they call a powder board. So there's a 1 meter, or basically 1 yard takeoff zone where they put down some baby powder, and as long as you hit within that zone, they measure your jump from that spot. We don't have that in my classification, so it makes things a little harder. And um, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's a good challenge.
I bet. Yeah.
I'm fascinated about that statement that you said a minute ago in regards to Chris's last question, that they have determined now that vision impacts speed development. Can you expand on that anymore? Did you learn anything else?
No, I haven't
That's
looked.
the first time I heard of that.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it too much. Where I ran across it, I think it was Tony. Tony doesn't really have a podcast, but sometimes he posts. I don't know. Anyway, but they were talking about like the central nervous system and how the brain reacts within the central nervous system. And I guess he went over to France and did some Speed the Cat stuff, and he met this guy that's got his PhD in like neurological training, and he trains a lot of soccer players in Europe. But they talked about that. Now, again, I've never heard that either, but like as I've been thinking about that lately, I'm just like, I could learn about it. I don't know if it would impact the way I perform. And I don't know if once you get to a certain point in your athleticism and you get comfortable enough, it doesn't have an impact. I don't know, but it is definitely a topic that has intrigued me. I'm never going to go
Yeah.
out and say like, oh, I could be a 100 meter world champion if I wasn't visually impaired. I don't think that is the case, but I'm interested to know how much that has to do with like down regulating your central nervous system, because we know like Cal Beach, you guys talk some Cal Beach stuff, right? Like we have a lot of protections in place. So how much of that down regulation is happening?
That's where I was headed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would
that's my
imagine,
initial thought.
yeah, same, exactly. I got to thinking as you were making that comment, it would probably impact someone with, say, limited peripheral vision differently than it would someone who is colorblind versus someone who, say, has just overall limited vision, period. Is restricted in every. I mean, I can see how someone who's totally blind, boy, they really have to shut off their fear factor. They have to somehow override so much because they can't see anything. That's impressive. Because I think of just not being able to see something for just a few seconds would impact how I could perform. So yeah, that's impressive. To know what these athletes have come to override that limitation.
Perception of threat.
Yes, perception of threat. Yeah,
it's a perception of threat.
Yeah,
it naturally inhibits your body from producing output because it's just trying to protect you. So that it makes a lot of sense.
Yes,
I never really thought about that. Not we've gone through some. Dan Fichter put out a course with somebody a while back. I can't remember who it was, but they did a lot of the vision training. Dr. Brandon Wally and I. You might want to go back and listen to Dr. Brandon's podcast that we did with him. It's way back in the beginning of our feed.
Okay.
Way back. Yeah, he's a very, very good friend of mine. Do what?
Oh, yeah. I'll go back and listen to that.
Yeah, it's in the 20s. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty early. Dr. Brandon, he's actually right down the street from our office, but optometrist, specializes in concussions, sport performance, and we watched actually Dan's visual podcast before, and I saw some really impressive results with testing people and challenging their vision. I guess I just never put two and two together that, hey, that's going to be something that could really influence your speed. So that's a pretty cool thing to think about and how it could help a lot of people. But I also heard somewhere, I don't know, maybe Chris, maybe it was on the show, or maybe I heard it somewhere else, that you have until the age of about 23 to maximize your speed output. Was that stated on our show, Chris?
That's a good question. I don't remember that specifically. You're talking about probably your potential. Is probably what you're thinking, John.
Output potential.
Potential,
right? Yeah,
right.
I was like, and I guess that correlates with the development of the prefrontal cortex because that's going to completely develop, I believe, by 23 or 24. But I don't know. I couldn't remember. That was kind of connecting the dots as well. I couldn't remember if that was said on our show or I heard it somewhere else, but I don't know. That's just a really interesting topic. I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Fascinated by that.
And vision, though, too.
I feel like that. I wish so. Once I started doing Feed the Cats training for myself a couple of years ago because I wanted to test it on myself while I was testing out on the high school athletes. And I think we could do a whole show on implementing Feed the Cats when you go from a traditional program and all of the issues. Like, I'm not Tony Holler, so I don't have that argument that he has over the course of a lot of years. But to go from a traditional training program of more conditioning to a Feed the Cat style, like, got a lot of kickback from parents and some of the athletes. But I was using it on myself, and I wish in college I would have had a times 40, because I would like to know if I did get fast. I feel like I'm faster. I've dealt with some injuries, but I feel like am faster now than I was when I was 22 or 23. And so just for context, I'm 38 now. I don't know if that matches the data or if I'm atypical or if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not as fast.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that training, I've had to adapt it a little bit, but I believe that there's an opportunity that Coach Holler's right, that it does. Speed grows. And if you keep things simple, you can be pretty fast for a while.
Yeah. Outside of, say, the realm of like true auto regulation, like true auto, where I would say as long as you're going as hard as you can go, a system like Feed the Cats is fantastic because even though the reps aren't that many, they are as hard as you can go every single time.
Yeah.
Your max effort. Like I said, outside of say a true John, we talked about auto regulation many times where we know, okay, you're fatigued because your time is showing this, then I could see where you could possibly upgrade it. But that is now you're talking about having to precisely measure a lot of athletes, which is quite challenging, as far as getting their times and precise distances and everything else.
Yeah, very much so.
Yep.
Very much so. One of the things that you mentioned when you reached out to us was the nutritional component to what you do. Expound on that a little bit. Like, I mean, that's basically the entire conversation for our listeners. Like, we haven't talked about it yet. Like, that's you just mentioned that's a big part of what you do. I'd like to hear your takes on it.
So I fell in love with nutrition 4 or 5 years ago. I've always had a little bit of an interest in it in the early 2000s when I was in high school. Again, it just goes back to I was trying to make myself as athletic as possible and looking there like, all right, you're training, try all these different training ideas and see what works. And then it's like your mindset and recovery is a big thing, and then nutrition. So I started down that road in high school, but didn't really get too far into it until 4 or 5 years ago when I really we had a sports dietitian through the para athletics, and she really like said some stuff that made a lot of sense to me, and so I started paying more attention to my nutrition, and especially knowing that I'm into my 30s.
Like, what kind of things got your attention that she said?
You're going to think this is dumb, but it was the simple stuff, right? Like, I went down this rabbit hole of, and this kind of goes, when I reached out to you guys, I liked your thought on your conversation with Coach Holler and the other conversations you've had. You do get deep into stuff, which I think there's a place for that, especially as athletes progress. But it's like, how do we simplify this? And with nutrition, like, I was getting so caught up in like my protein timing and like all these different vitamins and this supplement, that supplement, and like just trying to, I got to rotate my leafy greens and my vegetables so that I'm not getting all the same. So I get different nutrients. Like, it just got so overwhelming. And the dietitian's like, hey, just simplify it. Like, find out how much protein you need, get it in the day. Like, if you can space it out in a pretty efficient manner, go ahead, but just make sure you're getting it right. If there's a supplement that you think is good, take it, but you don't need to be going down this rabbit hole of stuff. And she's like, if you want to try something new, try it, but do it simply. And that just, I know it sounds stupid, but it made so much more sense to me. And it was just kind of like, I need to step back and focus on nutrition. And
no, it really doesn't. I mean, you keep saying it sounds stupid, but it's not. It makes perfect sense, and that's exactly why we brought this podcast to life. Was there's so much information out there now that it almost paralyzes people. I mean, it's paralysis by analysis, and so instead of just keeping it simple, you have all these different fitness influencers and podcasters and everybody else trying to just push whatever it is they have, and it gets too complicated.
Yeah.
So no, I think the concept of keeping it simple, which again is the reason I think Tony Holler's work is so great.
Yeah.
You just keep it simple.
It's very simple, right? Exactly.
Right. No, so I think it's excellent that, keeping it simple is what got you down that path. I have the same conversations with a lot of my athletes as well. They don't understand. They try to get into some of that stuff where they heard that this is bad and that is bad. It's like, bro, like you're eating Chick-fil-A 3 times a day. Like, that's not good. Let's keep it simple. Let's get some protein in.
Right. Hey, but Chick-fil-A is probably the best fast food place you could eat at. So that's, that's better than they're eating other places. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it's okay. I mean, there are, trivia fact here, there are 68 different ingredients in a char-grilled chicken sandwich.
I wouldn't doubt it. Wouldn't doubt it.
But
it is good.
Yeah. And that's kind of goes back to, and again, like, so my day job, one of the things, it's as a Paralympian and not even just in para-athletics, but a lot of the Olympic sports, what people don't understand is there's definitely like athletes that are paid well enough through sponsorships and maybe through their governing body that they can just do that full time. But there is a big number of Paralympians as well as Olympians that are still working full time. So my day job, just kind of leading into my love for nutrition, I ended up having an opportunity to work here at Black Label Supplements, we're a sports performance supplement company, and like I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of nutrition and supplementation now that I've been in it for quite a few years. But even now, like I get emails daily about a new ingredient, a new twist on this ingredient, a new, and it's even for me, it's overwhelming, right? So I've just stepped back and have said, hey, like, and to go a little farther, especially in high school athletes, I feel like there's so many people trying to steer high school athletes away from supplements. I personally think that's wrong. I think they're taking them and they're going to continue to take them. So instead of just not talking about it, we should educate them on how to use supplements, how to effectively use supplements, and how to include them into their basic nutrition plan.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with that 100%. I think supplements are almost a necessity in today's, especially in America today. Now, without getting political or whatever, hopefully RFK can fix some of that stuff for us. But our food quality is so poor in our country that we have to have supplements. We got to have the vitamins. We have to have the nutrients. We have to have the proteins and things because we're just not getting it in our daily food just because it's not there. Or we're stuck in the realm of fast food constantly. So no, I'm kind of right there with you. I tell my athletes the same thing. Like, I have no problem as long as they keep it simple. Don't turn into me. Don't take 8 scoops of pre-workout a day. That's not good. Don't do that. Don't do that. But
what are some of the
quality
things you
protein, quality
recommend?
creatine, go for it.
There you go.
Yeah. What do you recommend?
Yeah, what are some of the supplements that you would recommend to say? Well, and keep in mind, John and I both work with a lot of middle school, high school, collegiate level.
Yeah.
So
No, and that's kind of where I personally have started to find over the last, even 6 months or I guess a year, right? I've started to realize that there is this opportunity to bring that up. So I get it in the high school sports realm. So here's the first one. It's not a supplement, but it acts as a supplement, and that's sleep. So I'm not a sleep expert, all right, but I'm starting to graze the surface of how important that is. And the number one thing an athlete can do is get, I mean, if possible, 9 hours of sleep or be in bed for 9 hours. Like if you want to talk about working hard, right? Everybody talks about practice before practice and, we need to be in the gym an extra 5 hours or we're never going to be able to get to college. Like, let's think about, okay, you want to talk about hard, go to bed early, put your phone down a little bit. If you have a 6 a.m. practice, you got to go to bed to get 9 hours. You got to be in bed by 9. Can you do that? I don't know, but you can sure get an extra hour in the gym. So anyway, that's a long rant for me, but sleep, when you get quality sleep, the amount of hormones released, especially in high school kids, is insane. It's better than any steroid. Well, in my opinion, better than any steroid that you're ever going to be able to take.
Yeah, I mean, I think the literature shows that adolescents who get less than 8 hours of sleep a night, their risk of injury goes up. I believe it's somewhere between 65 to 69%.
It's over double. Yep.
It's incredible. And when I tell athletes that, like high school kids, I mean, their jaw drops because I mean, it's so common to see athletes getting maybe 5 hours of sleep a night and wondering why their hamstring pull won't heal.
For sure. And obviously, you guys have talked about this in the past. I've listened to some of your podcasts. Like, there's a balance between is some of that the pressure that's put on them by their club coaches or this or that. It probably is, but at some point, the athlete has to take their own training into their own hands, and they might have to say, hey, I have to go home and go to sleep, or I can't get up at that time. And I know there's so many variables, right? We can't predict all those, but generally speaking, they got to get sleep to get those hormones. And then the next one is kind of the opposite, is like creatine. I think if you're a healthy middle school, high school athlete, you're not taking medications or whatever, like 3 to 5 grams of creatine every day. I think that's an essential part of supplementation that can get you there. Talking about, we talk about feed the cats training, right? It's all about maximizing your explosive muscle within 5 seconds. What does creatine do? It amplifies the ability for most people that take it to maximize their explosiveness in the anabolic state, which is, 5 to 20 or 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I agree. I'm a big supporter of creatine, even at that type of age. That high school age is one of the most research supplements on the planet, and there are ample amount of benefits with, I believe, little to no side effects to it.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I should have looked up his name. It's spacing me right now, but the professor at Texas A&M, he's kind of like the guy on creatine. I was talking to him, and he told me when he was early on in the early 90s or late 80s, they were doing like 25 grams of creatine a day with the football players. I think he was at Tulsa, and they were doing that. And some of those kids were probably 17, 18 years old, and he's like, we didn't have any issues. So I believe that creatine is a great thing. Obviously, there's going to be always exceptions to any supplement.
Sure.
But that's a cheap way, and talking about, low quality food. If you're where I grew up and you're in maybe a lower to middle class income, maybe you can't control your food intake as well. But creatine is a great cheap supplement that can help athleticism.
What's the third one that you promote a lot or that you like to use with your kids?
Okay, this is so talking about sleep, creatine. I think the use of caffeine correctly. Okay, this is probably going to be the biggest controversial one that people are.
I am not the person to answer that question, so I'll just sit back and listen.
Here's and this is where I don't know if we're ever going to be able to make a huge impact, but the power of caffeine, when used correctly, and there's very little studies in adolescents and youth, but we know adolescents and youth are just pounding the caffeine. And so I think if you use it right, that's shown to have like a 4 to 6% boost in performance on the day of use, which is huge, right? I mean, you think of that, it doesn't sound like a lot, but 4 or 6% in a vertical jump or a 100-meter sprint or whatever is can be significant, right?
Yeah.
So the way I say it needs to be used is you need to have, and this is where things get hard, right? You need to limit your caffeine to before noon every day. And there's an exception, so I'll get there. But limit your caffeine to before noon every day and limit it to less than 1 milligram per kilogram body weight, which was probably about a half of a milligram per pound ish, right? So if you're a 150-pound high school athlete, you want to stay under 70, 75 milligrams of caffeine and only take it before noon. Why? So
and that's probably half a cup of coffee, just a standard cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, or one Red Bull, right? Like a small Red Bull, not a big Red Bull, small Red Bull, or a half a Monster. I don't know what kids are drinking now, Bangs or whatever, right?
I mean, most standard energy drinks are going to have about 300. 300, I believe, is the FDA's maximum limit in caffeine.
Yeah. In an energy drink, probably. I think they say if you're a healthy adult, 400 is okay.
Right. I'm saying per serving.
Yeah,
per
serving.
Like
right.
Drink,
So
they have a
scoop
scoop of pre-workout or whatever.
Right. So the energy drinks are going to vary in size and whatever. So I say stay under that. That's super hard for a lot of high school kids. Some it's not, right? But it's sneaky because you might drink that.
I take that before bed, bro.
Yeah, well, we could go more into the sleep deal. I hear it all the time, like, oh, well, I don't have to do it because I can sleep. Now, like, you probably can, especially if you're caffeine adapted. You can probably take pre-workout at 8 o'clock at night and go to sleep. But your sleep isn't going to be as deep, which affects the amount of hormone release, which affects the amount of recovery, right? So you're still sleeping, but are you sleeping good recovery sleep? No.
Right, and the caffeine's got a half-life of what, I believe 6 hours.
Yeah, 5 to 6. Everybody's going to be a little different there,
hours. But So I mean, so if you're taking in 100 milligrams by noon, I mean, by 6 o'clock you still got 50 surging through your system.
Yeah,
which is almost as much as you said as a recommended daily intake.
Right. So here's the exception when you're wanting to perform well. And I always say, like, for myself, I don't do it this often, but as a track athlete, like, in my stage, I'm only competing maybe once a month or so. But on a performance day, whether it's a game or a heavy lift or whatever, no more than once a week. And there's some caveats, which I need to get better at, like, presenting this, because there are some caveats to this. But then you want to go up to about 3 milligrams per kilogram. And this is specifically for under 18. There's some studies that show more than this over 18, but I think to keep it safe for kids, 3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, right before your performance. And most people can expect a 4 to 6% boost in performance. Now you're going to have to, because most high school sports are in the afternoon, evening, you got to balance. Is it worth it? If you play 3 basketball games a week, don't do it. Maybe the one on Friday night where the next day you can sleep, because you're not going to fall asleep till 2 or 3 in the morning. But if you want to get that performance boost, and I always, with everything, it's always test the process. Don't trust the process, but test it. Test it in a safe environment. And then if it works for you, then add it to a game or a track meet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, we've got good sleep. We've got, you talked about creatine. We talked about caffeine. What about one of the supplements I've really gotten into, or actually my wife does a lot more of this than I do. I'm kind of the basics. She's more the expert in this realm, but we've started incorporating a lot of collagen with our athletes as well as ourselves.
Yeah.
And I have found that is a really hot button supplement topic with a lot of people. At least parents that are educated, the ones that are actually educated, not the ones that say, "Hey, I played high school football. Right. I know." And I'm 50, but I know what I'm doing.
Or I watched a podcast and this is what this guru said. So
Right. But like I'm finding more and more people are actually engaged and interested in the collagen. I mean, is that a road you've gone down?
Yeah, absolutely. And so when it comes to, and it sounds like you are going to have more experience in this with me than I do in the high school and middle school athlete. My understanding of collagen is you don't start losing collagen until you get into your 20s or 30s. And it's very good for, when we talk about recovery, regular whole protein is a muscle recovery tool, whereas collagen is a connective tissue tool. So going into the 2016 Paralympic Games, I started getting Achilles tendonitis. And my wife tore her Achilles while we were in college. And so, like, it was a very hot button for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like my Achilles is starting to hurt going into a major competition, in 6 months. So I have to be able to continue to train at a high level to even make the team. And I started taking collagen, and like within a few weeks of doing that, my Achilles was great. And so I think collagen, in my experience as an older athlete, or if you have any sort of connective tissue issues, one of my coworkers, I actually coached him in high school, and then he works here for us now, but he tore his ACL, and as part of his rehab, he took collagen, and he feels like it was a huge benefit to his connective tissue rehab. When I was in college and my wife tore her Achilles, we didn't really know about it a lot, so we didn't use it with her. I wish we would have. But yeah, so
I think that's super. And you brought the Achilles, not to interrupt you, but that reminds me, Chris had an Achilles tear, which I think 10 years later he's still rehabbing from.
Yes.
Yeah, but like that might have been something then that could have really helped you, or like had you used it before?
Oh, I've used collagen a lot. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yes, and
curious.
And as far as I can definitely relate to the Achilles thing, because mine popped in half all of a sudden. Never had any issues.
Breaking news as of today: Deshaun Watson retore his Achilles.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Well, let me double check that. Make sure I'm not putting out inappropriate. But I swear I saw that.
It's actually very common to re-injure it. Yeah. It's actually one of the most common re-injured Uh, I mean, before it completely heals, and that's why they're so cautious. But yeah, as far as yeah, I totally agree with your collagen recommendation there, because that's sort of my, if I ever use a protein supplement and not a actual real food, that's my choice. It would be a collagen protein. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
All right, John, what you got?
No, I'm trying to pull it up right
Oh,
now. I
okay.
just wanted to make sure, but I am pretty sure he did re-tear
yeah,
All
it.
right, I got you. Yeah, sorry about that. So,
yeah, that's
But no, keep
yeah,
going.
please,
no.
please go, Tyson.
One of the and using collagen. Here's the next step of supplementation, right? Is using it correctly, right? I talked about caffeine. It can be used correctly, and you can see sweet performance gains. And not every supplement's going to work for everybody, but collagen is another example of, I think just taking it generally is a great thing, but what seems to work, what they're starting to feel like is the best, is taking it, 30 to 60 minutes before your actually workout, because your connective tissues have very little blood flow in them. And so when you're moving and you're working out, that's when they're going to have the most blood flow, even though there's still not a lot. And so collagen synthesis is potentially the highest at that point. So if you ingest the collagen 30 to 60 minutes before workouts, then that's gonna, and 15 grams at least. That's when you could potentially see the best impact. Another great time is before bed, because collagen is 1/3 glycine, and glycine is helpful with sleep. So, well, that's what I'll do on days um, I don't work out. I'll take it right before bed, and it seems to work out pretty good for me.
That's interesting you say that, because that seems, not that I'm not disagreeing. That seems like it's almost the opposite of what you hear everybody else say. Like one of the most popular times I hear, at least, to take collagen is like first thing in the morning, or I also follow up with that and saying, aside from the performance side of, like, if you're just trying to, like a coach like us, just trying to stay healthy, is there a more beneficial time of day to take it?
Yeah, I mean those are the times that I've been like steered towards, and that makes sense to me. But I think you're probably okay to really take it whenever, right? I like, even if you're not necessarily working out, but maybe you're, like, as a coach, you're more active certain times of the day that you're not. Maybe taking it when right before you're more active. But ultimately, this is where it gets down to, like, there's optimization, and then there's doing what's essential, right? Um, in this case, if it's essential for you to get it in, just get it in whenever you can. If you're really trying to optimize it, you can try to find the specific window to take it.
Right.
Okay, interesting stuff, man.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
that's a fun
Hey,
one.
what else?
That's a really fun
Yeah.
one. There's
Anything else you like? Do you use with your athletes in particular?
Yeah, I those are the main ones. Obviously, like a whey protein, I think that's kind of getting into where it's. I don't think you can ever simplify nutrition to the level you can simplify some of the trainings, like feed the cats. Not to say that it's bad to simplify it, but I think there's some, you got to have a little more understanding when it comes to nutrition, because there's so many things you can do. But I think overall daily protein is important. When you're a middle school and high school athlete, especially if you're in a lower, like, middle class family, you may not be able to get the optimal amount of protein. But what they can do is they can just try to add protein anytime they have the opportunity. I think a protein shake, a whey protein shake, is the best. You mentioned, Chris, you take collagen. You prefer that over a protein shake, which, I don't disagree with you. Especially, everybody's stage of life is a little different, but collagen is not a complete protein, so it won't spike muscle protein synthesis, and so it's not going to help you to the degree that a whey protein will, or a complete protein will, when it comes to recovery and muscle building. So, not to
Right.
say that it's better than nothing, for sure, and your connective tissue is going to thank you, but from a recovery standpoint, I think if a kid and a family can afford it, having just a scoop of whey protein sometime in the day uh, after practice, I think, is generally when people would say. But here's the thing: in a high school setting, after practice, they're probably going to go home and eat. But think about their nutrition from the time school starts to the end of the day. Like what they're feeding them in school, which most kids are going to eat, is not enough calories or nutrition to be able to supplement them going into a practice. So it may be better for a high school kid to have a scoop of protein, in the middle of the day or after their weights class versus after practice, because likely they'll go home and eat. And you guys, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. These are just things that I'm experiencing. I'm still kind of working through this, this door of educating high school kids and coaches on their supplementation use and nutrition. But, your input would be awesome.
Well, honestly, when it comes to if we have a kid, and I have a lot of them that are trying to gain weight, for example, first thing that I recommend that they do is creatine supplement and hamburgers. Not necessarily the bread, but get ground beef, put some real cheddar cheese. Okay, not the things that are not even real cheese, but actually melt some real cheese on there. There you go. If you normally eat one, eat two. If you normally eat two, eat three.
Yeah.
If you normally eat a quarter pound, eat a half pound. That kind of thing. Yeah. And that's our favorite means of kids trying to gain weight. Again, a lot of the male athletes I train, they do, and so that's kind of our recommendation is and then keep the supplement just that. If they want to have a protein supplement on the side, go for it. But we don't necessarily have a recommended whey. The only problem we've had with whey is when people have taken this, we have a lot of people who cannot digest it. So for those, I'm like, look, if you can't digest it, don't take it.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
not doing you any good.
Yeah, and in the supplement world, the argument is, okay, go to a plant-based protein, which I think there's getting some more higher quality plant-based proteins. I'm for sure big on the NSF certified per sport logo. That's the gold standard when it comes to, and it's the gold standard because they do testing, they do heavy metal testing, they make sure what's in it is what's in it, and obviously the banned substance side of things. But an EAA or essential amino acid supplement, not BCAA. BCAAs are super popular because they're cheap and supplement companies make a lot of money on them. But essential amino acids provide all the same the 9 essential amino acids that a whey protein will, but it's tolerable on the stomach. So I always steer athletes towards something like that. And if they want to do a plant-based, that's totally fine. Just make sure they do like a one that's NSF certified, because they're finding a lot of those plant-based that plants have to be processed so much. And I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not all the way against processed foods, but there's a lot of not so good things in some of those plant-based proteins.
Makes sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess from our standpoint, the way that we handle the nutritional side of it is, we definitely utilize supplements, but I always tell kids that we need to utilize supplements as they're intended, and that is as a supplement. Yeah. They are here to supplement what you are doing. There is I don't care what product or what brand you're using, there is no product that is going to be better than real quality food. Mm-hmm. But that goes back to what we were stating earlier, is our food quality in our country is at an all-time low, so we almost have to utilize supplements. But again, you've got to be doing the basics before you start to try to get any type of benefit from utilizing these supplements. So that's one of the things I always talk to our athletes about. And then, when we go into something like creatine, I think we just recently have started to incorporate creatine with our athletes a lot more over the past year or two. But I also tell our guys, something, I use creatine as like a little trick. So, we all know that you're going to get an initial boost once you start taking it. It's not uncommon to see athletes gain 10 to 15 pounds within their first true cycle of using creatine, probably in about 6 to 8 weeks or so, if that long. So I've always used it like, let's be smart. Let's think about this. If you're eating the right way, you're trying to gain weight, doing what Chris was saying, utilize something like a compound like creatine at the last minute when you have to, because it's very common to hear guys that are on the edge of getting recruited and getting that scholarship where the coach is like, look, you got to gain another 10 to 15 pounds here before we even consider offering you, a scholarship. So it's like, instead of using it in 8th grade, why don't you just try to eat right? And then come your sophomore, junior season when you've got possibly a scholarship on the line, utilize the benefits of something like creatine and get that extra 10 to 15 pounds. So I've always kind of used it as almost like a little performance enhancing agent.
Yeah.
In that respect,
Yeah. By the way, I want to make one comment though about what you just said, John, and that is, if you have a tendency to gain 10 to 15 pounds on creatine, taking more is not going to get you another 10 to 15 pounds. Certainly not a muscle, because once you have saturated everything with creatine, that's it. Like you've saturated.
Yep.
So it's like what you get is what you get. It's not, and it's not going to be more is not better in that case. Now I'm not saying it is not a toxic supplement, but you're wasting your money and you're making expensive urine.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. Yeah, I mentioned that the guy at Texas A&M, they were using 25 grams, but that's back before they knew that 3 to 5 grams was enough, right? They don't need to use 25 grams.
Oh no! Back in the day, we took 25 grams. So yeah, I totally agree with that study. I mean, I could have been a subject for that. Yeah.
What on that study, and I'm curious how it changed these days. I can't, again, another piece of research I saw. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was stating that, what was it? That I believe something along the lines of that, like alcohol consumption is not nearly as bad as we have been led to believe. It is actually the introduction of GMOs that trigger these different releases in like alcohol detoxification or something that makes it really bad on our system. And I hate to even say this and put it out there because I know I'm butchering this, but I can't remember where I heard that. But I think it goes with possibly the creatine thing. Like, can you imagine putting a kid on 20 to 25 grams of creatine today? Like, even if it was shown that it's still beneficial, like with the fact that these kids don't get any sunlight, we know what Dr. Jack Krus's work talks about. We understand, what this artificial light is doing to the mitochondria, with all of the GMOs that they have in their systems. Like, it's hard to fathom that they would do that back like when you were in high school, take 20, 25 grams. I feel like a kid's kidney would shut down these days if you did that because the body is so backed up with stuff.
Yeah.
Just can't process it anymore.
You're talking about when I was in high school, or are you talking about when Tyson was in high school?
Well, Tyson and I are basically the same age. So.
Right. Must be talking about you.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, John, I think you're talking to me on that one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't know, just times have changed and the body's backed up so much. And we just, like, kids can't absorb anything. Their pH levels are so out of whack because of things like artificial light and GMOs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's
and I think it's an interesting conversation,
for sure.
that we obviously keep going down. I think there's nuances to everything, but we're kind of coming to the end here. We try to keep the show at about an hour for the most part. And if you've listened to our show, I've told you, I always say, like, at the end of it, I always want our guests just to share a piece of advice. Like, if there was one thing that you could tell the athletes or the parents or the coach, like, what would that be?
I think keeping things simple and essential and not getting caught up in all the exceptions and minutia of things. There's time for that when you get, let's say you get to, even me, right? I got to the elite level. I went down that rabbit hole and realized it's not worth it. So I don't even know if there is times for that, but I think just keeping it simple, working hard and making sure you're stepping back and spending time recovering.
I think that's great information. I think the recovery side of it is a very, very undervalued component to performance.
Agreed.
Yeah.
No doubt. All right, well, Tyson, man, it's been good to connect with you. I appreciate you coming on and reaching out to us as well. Where can people find you?
I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fun to listen to you guys, and I have started going down some of the rabbit holes on GOTA and some other stuff you guys talk about, which is bad for my strength advisor. He's like, man, what are you getting all this stuff? So anyway, I'm keeping it simple, but I'm on, like we talked about this off air, but I don't have the time to really be super active on social media, but I've been trying to do more on Instagram. And another thing I'd like to share this with, and you guys are welcome to pass this on to your followers, but at Black Label Supplements, we have an athlete program for any competitive level, and we're working towards NSF certification for sport on all our products. And so if anybody wants to sign up for that, interested in even just getting a simple creatine or protein powder, through blacklabelsupplements.com, there's a button that says athletes. They can sign up. We basically give them just above our cost, because we want to be able to get supplements in kids' hands and educate them the right way on it, in our opinion, right? There's always different opinions about that. So those are the two places. I run that athlete program, and then on Instagram, it's Tyson Gunter _PLY. And the PLY is Paralympian. Some people ask me about that, and it's not well known, but anyway, that's where I'm at.
Cool,
Very
man.
good.
Well, guys, that's the show. Appreciate you guys if you share this and help spread Tyson's message. And like I said, man, it was good to meet you and good to talk to you. And that's a lot moving forward.
Yep.
All right, guys, that's the show.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Tyson.
you guys. Love you guys. See y'all later.